Hello and welcome to part 2 of this Masco MA17. So the parts have been delivered for this amp and we have got to change 3 tube sockets. As we look in this bag here, be careful rustling bags because Pink may appear thinking she's getting some food. So three belt and tube sockets for these two 6L6s and the rectifier. If you remember in part 1, if you watch part 1, that you can see these are loose, the sockets. That one's very loose, so we're going to change those. Put those there. Now if you remember, quite a bit of work had been done to this amp and it had been done very well, but we are going to just make some slight mods to this amp. We're going to put a master volume in and we're going to use the phonograph pot there, but we're going to use that. We've got another pot for that actually, and that is here, this dual gang master volume, and we'll show you where that's going to go on the schematic in a while. Now at the moment this microphone volume is wired between the jack socket, which is on the back, and the grid on the 7C7 tube. But we're going to remove that and wire it back to how it was before, and before it was placed after the plate of the 7C7, that is a Pento tube, and then we're going to have the master volume there. We're going to look at the tone control as well. Customer said he'd like to get a bit more out of the tone control, so we're going to look at that, and that's basically it really. We're going to check the bias on the tubes. Now this amp has got a 5U4 in there and it previously had a 5Y3, so we're going to have a look at that as well and see. We'll put the 5Y3 in, check the bias again, see what's what. Got a solid state rectifier, I think, somewhere that I made, and I made one for the last amp that this customer Richard sent down to me, and I've got another one here. We just need to put the rubber seal in the top to make it safe, so we're going to try that in there as well and see how well these tubes get on with that. So it just gives the customer some options really, as long as it doesn't over bias these tubes massively. Right, so I'll get the tubes out and we'll make a start. Right, we've got the tube tester on the bench, so we test some tubes. Now we've got some lock tool tubes here, but my tube tester does not test lock tools. We've got a Compactron, Decal, that says. We've got Magnavol, and I'm doing an amp build later in the year, and we're going to be using a couple of output tubes that have Magnavol bases. We've got a 7-pin there, Nouvar and Octal, and then we've got the standard Novell there. So we can't test the lock tools, I'm afraid. So I'm afraid that's a bit of an arm I toe. But we can test the tubes that are in this amp, and there is some other tubes, and you can see here, we just slide the tube tester across. We've got a box of tubes here, so not all of these can be lock tools surely. We've obviously got to unwrap them. So we'll start with these Sylvania 6L6s, these Coke bottles that have come out of the amp. So we'll plug one of those into there, and I just need to get the book because it eludes me for the minute what settings. I think it's 7E1, test is 8. 6L6, 7E1, test is 8, I am correct. So 7E1, everything down, test is 8. Let's switch on. Now this tube tester runs on a 110 volt step down transformer because it is American. I've been looking at getting a slightly more advanced one. So let's see what we've got then. We know the filaments work because we've had it running in the amp, haven't we? And there we go. Not brand new, but that's okay. That's 70 and climbing. So by the time that's warmed up, it's going to make 75 comfortable. So yeah, that's acceptable. Very good tube, that. Nothing wrong. But of course, internally, there may be problems with one of those 6L6s because it's been vibrating constantly with that very loose socket. Let's try the next one. That one's coming up. Doesn't seem to have quite as much swage as the other, but I don't know. Yes, that's swaging 75 those. So those are testing good, but as I say, we may find when we've got that socket in and we get fully testing, there may be problems. Now the next one we're going to test is the 5U4. So we really will need to look in the book for that one, because I certainly I don't test many of those. 5U4. Remember, there's two sides to that because it's a double diode. It's a full wave tube, so there's two diodes in there. So we've got 8D14 and 8D16. So 8D14. So let's pop him in, and we'll see how good he is. Now, if we look on the meter there, you can see the diode reading is at the bottom, so we're only looking for it to get into green, and he's going in there. And yes, he's reasonably good, so no problems there. So 6 we said was the other. Let's see what we've got there. A little weaker on that side, but not much. So that's good. So that's a good tube. So now we need to see what is wrapped up with this bevel wrap. So we've got 4 tubes here. We need to open them. Yeah, there's a pair there. So that's another 6L6 Coke. Say that again. That's another 6L6 Coke bottle. Those are RCAs, and there is 2 of them, so I'm presuming the other one's an RCA. That's a very nice tube. So let's go back. 7E1, test is 8. And it's good that we've got these, because if these test good and they work okay, if one of the others is faulty, we can just put these in. No problem. That's looking very good. I can tell how fast the needle's coming up. Look at those. That's a belting tube, so I'm hoping the other one is the same. Look at that. That tests like brand new. That's a beautiful tube. As long as I say, as long as the innards, you know, there's no rattling inside it with the elements. Oh, that's not it. So that tube is wrapped up with it. That's a different tube. So what's that then? See what that is. So I'm going with that. There we go. Keeping an eye. I can see Pink on the yard asleep. I'm trying to do this as quietly as possible, because if she comes in, she will ransack the video and demand food, and she's eating me out of house and home. Not sure what that is. that has nothing on it. So I'm always very dubious about tubes that have no identification on, but I think that's a 5Y3. There. Gotta be careful, it's a problem when you pack them in polythene. You can wipe the stamp off them. Right, let's have a look. Where's the book gone? The book, as they say up north in this country. Have you got the book? We have got the book indeed. So a 5Y3 is 8D2, 4 and 6. D2. One side is 4, one side is 6. So I'm going to put this in. It's not a good idea to do this, but 8D1, 4 and 6. 4. That's a very good tube, that is. 4 and 6, so I think that's what that is. I think that's a 5Y3. It tests as a 5Y3 anyway, so I'm hoping it is. Of course, there's one thing putting it in the tube tester, there's another thing putting it in the amplifier, so we'll have to be very careful with that. Possibly the variac and the current limiter on that one. I mean, if it develops a short, the current limiter will catch it anyway. And that's another 6L6, so 7E1, test is 8. Let's give that a go. So is this this looks like the matching tube to the other RCA. Let's see what this one tells us. Oh yes. What a fantastic pair of tubes those are. Now that is a Russian Softec tube. Again. Oh, 5U4G. Excellent. Can you remember the settings for that? I'm going to have to look again because I can't remember. I'll have to write. I must write these down, you know, and put them, because I only ever use a certain amount of tubes in guitar amps, don't we? I could just write a list down, pin it on the bench there. Most of them I can remember, but the rectifier tubes I never do, because I've not really tested a lot of them. 5U4G, 5U4, there, 8D1, 8D1, and test was test 4 and 6, I think. 4 and 6 is correct. He looks brand new, very shiny. And yes, he's coming up. Doesn't test as good as the 5Y3, mind you, but it's there. 4 and 6. Yeah, it's there. It's not brand new, but it's there. So that's another good tube. So I'm going to look in here now and see what we've got in here. Let's have a look. So we've got a load of lockjaws which I sadly cannot test. Let's look at this lot in here. Let's just move the tube tester. My days, that's a stash. Look at the beautiful boxes on those. Gorgeous. They don't make boxes like that anymore, do they? So that's a little bit of a shame. That's 7N7, those. What have we got in here? New old stock bought recently. We've got 6SC7, 6SC7, 6SL7GT and 6SJ7. Well, we can test those because those are octal bases. And then we've got these here. Look at those beautiful Sylvania boxes. I suppose you people that live in the States are probably used to seeing these, but that's just gorgeous. You don't see printing like that anymore. So those are all lock tools. In fact, they're all lock tools because they're all 7C7s. It's a shame we can't test those. That's a bit of a shame. But this tube tester was made in 1969. And whilst that seems a long time ago, most of these lock tool tubes were being used in the 1940s, 1950s. This amplifier that we're working on, this Masco, was made around 1947. So yes, they stopped putting the lock tool socket on the tube testers by then. 20 odd years. But we've still got these, and we can test these. So we've got a 6SC7 General Electric box again. Beautiful printing on that, just looks gorgeous. Right, anybody know what my tube tester should be set at for a 6SC7? Let's have a look. Actually, somebody left me a comment saying they'd actually got this same tube tester. I don't think it was anyone in this country though. I think it was someone from the States, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. 6SG7, 6SC7, 8E1, 3 and 4, 8E1, 3 and 4. Let's try 3 then. See if this is any good. So this is a double triode tube. Bit of life in him still, but by no means brand new, is he? But there's a little bit in him, and a little bit more. So we've 65, and oh yes, it's about the same. So not a bad tube, not fantastic, but it's usable and there's life in it. It would work. And there's probably a good few years left in him yet, so he's useful. It won't be needed on this project, but I did say to Richard, you send the tubes and you know what tubes you want and I'll test them for you. So 6SJ7. I think he sent the J7 because the Masco MA17 that we're working on, and you can see it actually written on the schematic, some had a 6SJ7 in instead of the lock tool 7C7, and some people do change that 7C7 for the 6SJ7, but I really can't see the point because it works okay, and usually the sockets are dodgy on those, but on that one the sockets are brilliant on the amp we're working on. So that's another one, again that's crawling up to about 65. Let's try the other side, and again. So yeah, so again still some life in that one. 6SL7GT Braemar. Let's try this then. E1, 3 and 6. So we've got 8E1, 3, Ooh, he's struggling. It still work though. It will still run that, but he's tired. Yes, he's done a long shift, that one. Let's have a look at the other side. Other side's got a little bit more in him. But that side's a little tired. So he's a bit odd leg, that one. Getting up there though. But yes, borderline, but it would still work in something. Still work. And I'm afraid that's the end of the tube testing. So yes, that's a really nice set of tubes and a really nice pair that we've got here. Why do I always think of Benny Hill when I say that? Or getting arrested. Very nice pair of 6L6Gs we've got there. And a very nice 5U4. So I think we may end up with those RCAs in this amplifier. Right, that's been a long time testing those. Let's get on and start doing some work on the amp. Now I've just spotted something. I'm going to have to take out this transformer, which is the choke, to get to the socket on the rectifier tube. That is not good, but never mind, it's got to be done. It's only a couple of bolts. Look who's back again. Yes. Yes. So I've got the choke removed and I'm looking in here and looks like there's been a bit of a blowout or something in there. There's a lot of gunge. We'll have to drill holes to mount these new sockets. These old ones have just got like a ring clip on there. But you can't get these type of sockets anymore. And that's probably always been loose. Pink's in the cat tray. She's about to leave me a present. And I don't think it's going to be a very nice present. Right, I've got the tube socket out. And yeah, this is going to be fun and games. So if I offer up the new one, you can see there's a pip there, on there, and that's uncentering the socket there. So the first job, I'm afraid, is to get rid of that. Right, so we're just looking at mounting these. So the locator, you can see there, is the same on all of these tubes. The locator has been put facing the front of the amp, so you need to get those the right way round, or the wires won't fit properly. In other words, if you put your socket on like that, your filament wires are down here and they're not going to reach over there. So it's important to get those correct, which we have done. Still might need a little bit more off there to get that in. Not quite sitting, but we're there or thereabouts with it now. Right, oh, finished. So I've blitzed into this and got it done. So we're just going to go through some of the things that I actually have done to this amp, and you can see it looks a bit different in there from when we last looked at it. So we changed these three sockets, these octals, so we've got some Beltons in there. What else? We've added this master volume, this 2-gang master volume pot here. They've rewired the volume back correctly as per the schematic. The microphone volume, the phonographic volume, which was the channel, well, it wasn't actually all the channel, it was feeding straight into the phase inverter. That had been removed anyway. And if you remember before, somebody put that volume between the input socket and the grid of the 7C7. We've removed that, connected the grid straight up to the 7C7, and I've added that 4.7 nanofarad cap that was missing off here, 0.005, but with 4.7. Unfortunately, I put the wrong one in. It's only 3.3 nanofarad. So I've got to change that, but I thought I'd run it up and have a listen to the amp with it in. What else have we done? Fuse, we've added an HT fuse in there because it really does need one. We've moved the capacitor here and I've upped it to 33, it was 22 and it was wedged in here. There was nothing wrong with it and nothing wrong with the way it was put in, it's just that I had to snip it to get it off the valve pin and the lead just ended up not being long enough, and then with putting the fuse over here, so I just put a new one in and moved it. We've put screen resistors on the screens of the output tubes. There wasn't going to do that. Of course I realised that by the time I'd got these sockets out I might as well do them anyway, because I've probably rewired 3/4 of the amp. The only section I've not rewired is this preamp stage, and all we've done really is swap that volume on there, so not a lot of work but on the preamp stage, but a lot of work on the rest of the amp from phase inverter onwards. They're the wires for the master volume we've put in there. 5.6k grid stoppers on both output tubes there, so you can see quite a lot of work has been done to this amp to get it up to this point where we're now going to fire this amp up. But first of all, we're going to get some meters attached and things so we can monitor the voltage. We've put a new center tap on there again because we cut the tube off, so we've had to make the center tap. And we've put the tone control in. Now the tone control is off the, and it's my old favourite off here. Let's bring this up. Is the 5F2A tone control here, so we've added that. You can see that here. We just hone over, you can see all that there. So we're ready to fire this beast up. Now I've got the original tubes in, but I've got a solid state rectifier in. The reason I've got that is I want to bring this voltage up slowly, and I can't do that with a tube rectifier because you need so much voltage put into the amp to get it to work, and by the time it's conducting, if I've got a problem, I'll have too much voltage, although I will be on the current limiter. So we're going to take this up really steadily. You need to get a speaker plugged into it and just need to get some meters connected. Right, I'm going to power this up. So I've got a meter monitoring the HT current, and I've got a meter monitoring the HT voltage, and I want to monitor the current on the HT of this because I can monitor it on the wall, but that's combined with the transformer on there, which is already drawing 30 milliamps unloaded. So I want to just get a more accurate reading. Well, that's a bit strange. So have I got these connected properly? Well, I don't see any current on there, but the bulbs are lighting up. I have only got 30 watts of bulbs, but I'd expect to see something. So let's just go up a bit. But I'm not seeing any plate volts. Right, so what's wrong there? We weren't getting any HT voltage because I'd wired the filament and the HT feed to pin 7 on the rectifier socket instead of pin 8 because I'm a plank, and that's the first plank moment of the week, and it's only Monday dinner time. This choke is a posterior peen. It is. Is that a word? Posterior. It's going to be word of the week. Because I make words up like that. Because I'm stupid. But anyway, let me know in the comments if that's an actual word. But you get the gist of what I mean. Right, let's try again. And see what we get now. So 30 watts of bulbs to start us off. And oh, it works better when it's plugged in. And we're off, thankfully. The current meter is not showing us anything yet, but that could be because we're not drawing any current. Could also be because I've damaged this and I was testing something, and I'm afraid I created a short and the meter didn't like it. Now the auto doesn't work properly and it doesn't measure resistance anymore. It still measures voltage, and by the look of it, it doesn't measure current either, even though I'm not even sure if is that going through it. Let's just put this on the other side. And now we've got nothing. So it's not going through the meter, is it? For some reason. These not pushed in enough. Have we got it in the right sockets? Because you know what I'm like. No, that doesn't seem to be working, so I'm not sure there. So we might just have to put the HT fuse in for the time being, or we won't get anything, will we? Voltage is creeping up. We've got 98 volts going in off the wall. Of course, we can divide that by 2 because remember it's being stepped down by half for about 120 volts. So I'm guessing we've got about 50 volts going into the amp, which won't be enough to fire it up. Well, it might be. I'll go up another 10 watts on the bulbs. So 40 watts now. Yes, that's boosting things up. Pilot light is lit. 214 volts, and you can see now the tubes are drawing current. That's beginning to fall. Don't hear anything out of the speaker. You've got the volumes turned up. I don't hear anything coming out of there. But there could be many more Planck moments. Drawing 110 milliamps, the bulb's dim. 150, we've got what, 75 volts going in there. Tubes are still cold. Maybe we just need another bulb. Let's go up to a 60 watt bulb. Wow, that thing's hot. Oh yes. Yes, we're up and running. And all's looking well there. Not bad at all. Yes, that's looking good. Let's put in another 60, go to 120, bulbs are getting dimmer now. And that's really coming up. That's flat out. 160. It's about 80 volts going into it now, and there's 280 on the plate voltage. So I'm just going to let that run for a minute because we've got that capacitor in there, that new one, that electrolytic. Just that doesn't seem bad, does it? Let's get another bulb in and get a bit more, get some more plate bolts in there. So I'm going to put 100 in there now. We'll have 160 watts of bulbs, and that's going to bring it up. Should get a lot more volume. 320 milliamps we're drawing now off the wall, and the plate volts is 308, dropping slightly. Let's just put the master full up. It's quite nice. So I've got the master full up now, and I've got the microphone. So we've got 176 volts going in off the wall, but again we have to halve that, remember. Right, I'm going to drop that 60 out and put 100 in. We'll have 200 watts of current limiting now. And the next step after that is switching it off. Wow, that is clean. Sounding rather splendiferous. That sounds rather tasty. Right, off with the current limiter. And you can hear that 6V6, that 6L6. Is it that? Yes. A bit of leakage through there. Oh dear. My word, that's a little so that's just got that nice clip there. So we need, obviously, we need to remove the rectifier now. A solid state, we don't need him anymore. So let's put the original 5U4 back in now. Let's get him in there. Right, I'll put the current limiter back on just while we're doing, because we've had that tube out, and just to be on the safe side. As you can see, the current going down, so now we should have a lot less plate bolts. Take the current limiter off. You can hear that tube, it sounds like a one, and it is the output tube, I think. Sounds like a reverb tank. 19.3 watts on the nose, absolutely on the nose. Right, I've got the RCA Coke bottles in. They are very rattly, those Sylvanias. So I've got those in. And I've measured that cathode resistor while I've got the amp off, and it is exactly 200 ohms. Well, let's go again. Put the current limiter on. Let's take that out. So that's the amp flat out, which I think is pretty quiet. Turn the tone down. Considering it's flat out. That's the amp about halfway up. Wow, that is quiet. Take the current limiter off. That's flat out. A little bit of noise, but considering it's a you know, point to point amp, but halfway that's pretty quiet. Drawing 550 milliamps. Right, let's test. Let's do the bias on these tubes. They're exactly the same, 19.35. So they're the same. So they are bang on. Now look. That's absolutely flat out. Halfway, those tubes are quiet as anything. So those Sylvanias have had it, I'm afraid, both of them. And they're both like castanets. Probably can't hear that, but this one especially. Terrible. So they've had it, and I thought they had. And what's damaged those is those tube sockets being loose. Has absolutely ruined those tubes because they've just been vibrating away on top of the amp. And every time it's been put down, you know, picked up, put down on a surface, it just taters them. So they're finished, I'm afraid, which is a real shame. But at least we've got these RCAs, and we know these are cracking tubes. Remember, we had them in the tube tester. They're corking tubes. So now we've got some serious kit there. We've got the original 5U4 in there, getting 307. What I'm now going to do is, remember this amp originally had a 5Y3 in it. Someone left me a comment on the first video. I think it was Jeff, who comments quite a lot now on the channel and provides some very useful information. And I think he said I'd get more sag with the 5Y3, which stands to reason because the 5U4 is a much more robust tube. Right, I've got the 5Y3 in there now, and we've only got 355 volts with that. Now drawing 18 watts with that tube in there, so the bias is 18 watts. So not a great deal of difference. So check out the 7N7. I've got one of the channels inverted. Look at the state of that. We turn the volume up and look at one side. If we go peak to peak, we've got 28 volts on channel 1, which is the yellow. And if we go channel 2, we've only got 8 volts. So we've got a 20 volt difference there. Now remember, we can't test these tubes, these Loctol tubes. So let's put the 7N7 in. Right, now I've got the 7N7 in. I turn up the volume, and now look at the difference. But the peak to peak voltage, 34, that's peaking at there. Five volts. So massive problems there. But the 7N7 looks a much better tube. Now remember, we can't test these Loctols. Is this 7N7 7F7, is there something wrong with it? So now to balance up the phase inverter, we'll worry about that 7F7 later. So I've got a 1K resistor jumpered in now, which is what's on the schematic. And if we hone in on the schematic here, it's a bit bright, let's go there. If you look at the cathodes on the 7F7, the Tide, with a 1k resistor there. Look, it says 22. That's going to ground. So let's see what happens if we increase that resistor. Now that is a 47k resistor. That's beginning to look a bit more like it. And if we look, they're just about matched at the bottom, and you can see we're at 5 volts per division, so you can see they're about a division out, so they're about 5 volts out now. And if we click on there, we've got 14.8 on that side. We had 4 before. And if we go off channel 2 onto channel 1, we've got 20 volts peaking. Go on to the other side, we're just about 14.6, about 5.5 volts, something like that, out. So that's pretty close. It's not brilliant, but it's pretty close. So that's doing that because triggers on channel 1. So here's another problem as well. This transformer is red hot, and it's so hot that the wax is beginning to melt on it. Now I've had this on, I don't know, an hour and a half maybe, so I think that 5U4 is a little bit fierce for this amp, and I think that we should put the 5Y3 in there, because all the wax is beginning to melt in here. And on these wires as well, my days. So yes, I think that's driving it a little too hard. This is why we test, because people, you know, over the years people change things in these amps. They put more powerful rectifier tubes in, and you know, boost the plate voltage, and that inevitably boosts the bias and draws more current. So let's see what current we have drawing off the mains then. Now I put a meter across this, another meter, and then the other one, because that one is broken, and I got about 124 milliamps across that fuse. So we're drawing 550 milliamps off the wall. So we need to get that down, because that transformer won't stand much more of that. Well, I thought I'd have this finished by dinner time. More problems arising. So before we do any more testing, we're going to let this thing cool down a bit, and we are going to put that 5Y3 in there. That'll drop the bias to 18 watts, and I think that's more than enough for this amp. There we go, 520 milliamps. So that's drawing 30 milliamps less. So be very careful when you're swapping and wrapping these tubes, these rectifier tubes, because you could end up burning out the power transformer on a gig. And that's why we test, because when things have been changed like that, it's always best to test and make sure that that's going to be okay, and it's not. So only a 5Y3 for this amp, without a doubt. Right, so wasn't happy with the way this master volume was working. So I hooked it up to the scope, and I scoped it, turning it down, and when it reached about number 2 on the dial, it was flipping the phase on the scope. So I went back over my work, there had to be something wrong, and I realised that I hadn't grounded this master volume pot. and I'd put the grounds for, I've grounded these cables at one end on here, both of these cables, to keep things quiet, but I'd forgot to ground the actual pot to the actual ground on the pot there. I'd forgot to put that down to chassis, and that's what was causing the imbalance on the phase inverter. So I've put the ground in, snipped out the 68k I'd got in there, and I wasn't happy with that. That just didn't seem right, that being in there at all, although it did balance up the phase inverter. So now I've got the 7F7 back in the amp, so I've got the 1k resistor back in now, which is what we had originally. And look at that, that is perfect, perfectly matched. So second plank moment of the day, first one at dinner time and one late afternoon. Just thought, when I plugged it in and I played it, and it was as I turned the master volume down, I thought that just, it doesn't sound right. It was overdriving when I turned it down, so I knew something wasn't right. Well, that's spot on. So if I turn the master volume down, you can see now it goes down properly all the way. But what was happening before, the volume was coming down, and obviously it's acting like a post phase master volume, where they just clip one terminal of the pot to one grid leak and the the center tap terminal to the other grid leak resistor. But I don't like that. That's why I always ground the pot, have a dual gang pot and ground it. When we got down to about there, it was flipping the phase on one side, and they were actually in phase. I know these look in phase, but I've actually inverted one side, one channel. But now, and that's, let's just go up. We need to go up to, so now go up to 5 volts. Now I've got the microphone channel, the volume, I've got that up just shy of halfway. This is the master volume going up. You can see as it begins to go up, it's just beginning to get a little out there. And if we go on to 10 volts, that's the master volume flat out. So that's spot on, that's good enough for me. So that is the 7N7 now, and look at the difference. That's a mile out, an absolute mile out. And that's 5 volts per division, and that's over 2 divisions out, so that's about 12, 13 volts out. So just put another one in. Let's wait till it warms up. Up it comes, and you can see that's how, yeah, save again. So that all to do with the gain of these tubes. Right, I've got the Masco on the 4x12. So we'll have a bit of a listen. So I've got the master volume about halfway up, and I've got the volume on number 2, and we've got all of the tone in. So let's so we put, and this thing is seriously loud. So let's we'll put the volume up halfway now and bring the master down to 2. You can see that's beginning to break up now. So we just put it at number 4 on the volume. See, if we start to really crank this now, and the more we crank it up, we can take more of the treble out, because as we get this 500k pot up, it'll pass more highs. Number 7 now on the volume, we've got the master now. Let's just go full tilt. Now you won't get a great overdrive sound out of this amp, and the customer doesn't really want that, so he'll probably never crank it up, the volume up to number 10. This amp is so loud, You can virtually get whatever drive you want out of it, but the coupling caps are a bit high. So it's a little bit grungy on the bottom end. But the customer doesn't go for that sort of thing on this. He's a traditional blues player. If I get this up to halfway this volume, that's just the clipping point for it. Quite low now. I've got that master on number 2 there. There we go. So that's the Masco MA17 that we've done a few mods to there. That's a great little amp. I could play around with that all day, but sadly I've got other repairs that I must get through. So that'll do it for this one. So thanks for watching. You all take care, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye for now.